Hello everyone and welcome to my little corner of the internet. My name's Michael and I'm bitten by a radioactive book. Today we're starting a new segment here on my channel. It's called 15 in 2015, and over the course of the next few weeks I'm showing you 15 books each Thursday from different genres I'm reading that I might get to read in 2015. So they are on a high priority within my huge TBR abyss. This first segment is dedicated to fantasy, so let's get started. First off, we have Besieged by Rowena Corey Daniels. Here we have a story of three characters, I guess. We have the true man that are in the conflict with the mystics, and we see that story from the point of view from King Sharald. He's the king of the true man, and he has a son who's a half-blood mystic called Sorn, and Sorn is raised to be a weapon against the mystics. And I think the second POV in the book is Sorn himself. Then we have a third POV from Imogen, and Imogen is the kind of a chosen female within the society of the mystics, and the females have greater powers than the male mystics, but she's kind of subdued by males. I think that's, or by men. And so we're seeing the conflict basically from the mystic side as well, and that is always interesting to me. So I'm really looking forward to this one. The next one we have is Timon's Flight by Mary Victoria, and this is the book that drew me in with its world building, because apparently the whole world is one large tree, which has like its branches, and different towns are on different branches or something like that, and there seems to be a way to fly there with flying ships or something if you look at the cover. And our main protagonist is Timon, and Timon lives in a city that forbids travel through the whole tree, and they have some kind of slaves in this city, and Timon meets one of those slaves in a bath, I think, and then decides to join some of the slave rebels and break out of his own city and his own habits and travel the tree. And that sounds really interesting, and yeah, the world building is really intriguing. Next up we have Range of Ghosts by Elizabeth Bear, and that is really exciting again in regards of world building, because the book plays in some kind of Mongolian inspired fantasy world, where we have a lot of nomadic people who live aside a long trading road, and there are large steppes, and the people often are rider folk who ride on horses, and we're following two protagonists who both lost their worldly powers. We have a son of a Khan, Timur, and Timur is the rightful heir to his father's throne, but he's not like the strongest one in power, and his cousins kind of drove him away from the throne, and so he had to flee. And we also have the princess Samarka, and she is also an heir to a throne, and she was supposed to marry someone, and did, but that marriage kind of ended, and now she has turned away from her worldly powers and seeks out powers as a wizard, and these two somehow meet up and are going up against a kind of cult that tries to bring all the people alongside this huge trading road into a war. And a little fun fact about the author, Elizabeth Bear is like a really renowned fantasy author, and she's also the significant other of Scott Lynch, the writer of the Gentleman Bastard series. Next up we have a book that, or a series that I find really intriguing. It's The Darkness That Comes Before, the first in the Prince of Nothing series by R. Scott Becker. And this is a series that is often referred to as being similar to the Malazan Book of the Fallen. It is compared with Dune and The Lord of the Rings, so with a lot of the great works of fantasy. It's a kind of grimdark book. It seems to be very heavy on philosophy. I heard some people who said, yeah, it's a bit dense and you have to work a lot to get into this book, but so it is for Stephen Erickson, and he is my favorite author, so I'm really looking forward to get into this one as well. And it's supposed to be a trilogy of trilogies, so this first trilogy is already out, and I think at least the first two books in the second trilogy are available as well. So if you get into that kind of series, then there's a lot to read already. Next up we have The Immortal Prince by Jennifer Fallon. It's the first in the Type Lords quartet, I think, and all 4 books are already available. This is a very intriguing premise because we follow Kayal, and Kayal's hanging goes wrong, and he just doesn't die. And when that happens, he claims, yeah, that is because I'm one of the immortal Tide Lords, which is actually something that is rather believed a kind of mythical creature and not real. And so Akkadi, who is a half human, half animal from the race of the Krasi, is sent to investigate those claims, and by unraveling the story of Kayal, she gets into the danger of her own secrets being revealed. And I really found that kind of premise really intriguing, so to find out if this Kayal is an immortal or not, and where that all leads to. Next up we have another example of world building that drew me in. It's The Winds of Kalakovo, the first book in the Lays of Anuskaya by Bradley P. Beaulieu. And this is a book where the world has like different islands, and there are a lot of mountainous regions, so the people have to live up high on the mountains, and their main way of traveling are wind ships, as you can see on the there, on the cover. And yeah, that is really intriguing, and there are elementals, and when an elemental attack happens, Prince Nikander, the heir to the throne, is sent to investigate where this attack is coming from. There is like a child prodigy who's believed to be behind this, and he turns out to be an autistic savant that may hold the key to prevent actually the blight that has fallen over the lands. And then the dukes start to fight over I think over the savant, and Nikander I think has kind of to protect him or something like that. Yeah, and that sounds really intriguing with a great world building. It's a trilogy, and the trilogy is already finished. Next up we have The Grim Company by Luke Skull. This is straight up military fantasy in the Grimdark region, which is right up my alley and what I'm really liking to read over the last couple of years. There are supposed to veterans, disillusioned veterans, as we know from stories like Abercrombie or Mark Lawrence or the Grim Company by Glenn Cook, and The Black Company by Glenn Cook. The Grim Company, of course, is the book by Luke Skull here that we're talking about. And these two, like, disillusioned veterans meet like a young rebel and get involved with him, and from that on out the plot seems to develop. Next up we have The Leopard by K.V. Johansson. This is the first book in a duology, and the second book comes out in December 9th, I think, and it's called The Lady. I put the cover on here as well. And yeah, this were absolute cover buys for me. And when I read the premise, I got really excited, because it is a fantasy set in a more like Eastern or Asian-inspired fantasy world, and we follow Ajwa, an assassin who is called the Leopard, and he's kind of immortal, I think, because he is cursed to live, but he wants to end this kind of horror life. And to get his wish, he has to do one final task for his goddess, I think, to kill someone in the city of Markant, and he is tasked to do this together with like a half-wit called Gu, and these two will form some kind of bond, I think. And we also have other characters in the book apparently, and I'm going to read you one of the sentences that really drew me in, and I was really excited about. It was to Maracant 2 come a Northrun wanderer and her demon Werbran lover, carrying the obsidian sword Lacaris, a weapon forged by the old great gods to bring their justice to the 7 devils who escaped the cold hell so long before. So apparently there are more characters than Ajwa and Gu in it as well, and it seems all very exotic, very fascinating, a really interesting world. Next up we have Traitor's Blade by Sebastian de Castel. It's a book I would call a fantasy take on the Three Musketeers. It has this kind of Renaissance feeling, and instead of the musketeer we're following like the greatcoats, and the greatcoats are some kind of traveling magisters who uphold law and justice in this fantasy world, and we're following their adventures, and that sounds to be really, really interesting, kind of an adventuring fantasy novel. Next up we have Arcanum by Simon Morden. It's a standalone, and it has a very intriguing premise, because it is actually set in our world, but if our world would have been filled with magic and fantasy races, I heard dwarves would be in there and elves as well, so it is the time where the Roman Empire is brought down by some spell-wielding shamans or something like that, and we're following the kingdom or little kingdom of Carinthia, and their wealth mainly comes from having access to a lot of powerful magic, and now that kind of magic seems to run out, and we're seeing where that leads this country. And I really was intrigued by this kind of mix up of history and fantastical elements, so that will be really interesting to read about. Next up we have The Copper Promise by Jen Williams. This book was a bit hyped in some circles because it was, I think, first released in like 4 parts as an indie publishing, and now it has a real publisher and was released, and there is a sequel in the works, I think, and we're following 3 characters: Lord Frith, I think, Vidrin, and Sir Sebastian Caverson, and they're all involved somehow with a building called like the Citadel, and beneath the Citadel there seem to be some caves that hold some mysteries, and these 3 are going up against a threat that's kind of threatening the whole country, and they're not even get paid for it. And so you see there might be a bit of humor in the book as well. So I'm really looking forward to it, and Jen Williams seems to be a new author that's worth looking into. Next up we have The 7-Petaled Shield by Deborah J. Ross, the first in the, I think it's a trilogy, also called The 7-Petaled Shield, and all 3 books are available. This seems like a very typical fantasy where we have a threat that is confined like in the north, and a mythical king did this by creating the 7-petaled shield and kind of including the shield within his the walls of his city or something like that. And now that is all a bit like forgotten, and the city is attacked and conquered, and the widowed queen flees with her son, and apparently they take the heartstone of the 7-petaled shield with them, and therefore the threat that is confined in the north gets stronger, and now the queen and her son have to go up against that kind of threat, but also against the threat of the king that conquered their city. It sounds like a very typical fantasy story, and I was drawn in by the lovely covers of the series, so I'm really looking forward to read it. Next up we have Moon's Artificer by Tom Lloyd, the first in the Empire of the 100 Houses series. And as the series is called, there is an empire made up of 100 houses, and there are a lot of intrigues between those houses, and our character Naren has to navigate between these intrigues, has to find out what the Moon's Artifice is, because it could be the poison that destroys the empire, and he is accompanied by a troop of misfits, I think, and this book is referred to fans of George R. R. Martin and Joe Abercrombie. Okay, that might be a bit gripping too high, but nonetheless it seems like a really intriguing series, and the second book I think is to come out next year at some point, so it might be a good time to start the series. Next up we have another series I'm really interested in. It's the Shiva Trilogy by Amish Tripathi, and the first installment is called The Immortals of Meluha, and apparently this is kind of a fantasy setting in India, and it plays a lot with Indian mythology. It's based like 1900 years before Christ, so in the ancient history of India, and this whole mythological Indian fantasy setting really spoke to me, and I'm really looking for stories that are set a bit outside the usual medieval fantasy setting. As you might have seen already through some of the books I showed you, and that seems to be another really unique setting to discover. And last but not least, we have Babylon Steel by Guy Siebold. And I'm just reading you the synopsis on the back because I found that really intriguing and sounding a bit hilarious, and I'm really looking forward to it. You can see by the cover that it plays a bit with cheap imagery, and that seems to be the case with the plot as well, and it sounds really, really humorous. So I'm going to start here. Babylon Steel, ex-sword for hire, ex other things, runs the Red Lantern, the best brothel in the city. She's got elves using sex magic upstairs, S&M in the basement, and a large green troll cooking breakfast in the kitchen, and she'd love you to visit. Except she's not having a good week. The vessels of purity are protesting against brothels. Girls are disappearing, and if she can't pay her taxes, Babylon's going to lose the lantern. She'd given up the mercenary life, but when the mysterious Darzak Fane pays her to find a missing heiress, she has to take the job. And then her past starts to catch up with her in other, more dangerous ways. Witty and fresh, Siebold delivers the most exciting fantasy debut in years. Okay, that might be a bit too far, but yeah. It came out in 2011, and I think there's at least a second book in the series. And yeah, as you can see, that sounds like a really fun read to discover. And you might have spotted like a second theme, because this is by a female author, and I've included a lot of female authors as well. I think it's at least half, or maybe even more than half, of the books I've shown you are actually written by female authors. So as you can see, I try to show you like a huge variety and diversity the genre has to offer regarding authors and setting and themes. And I hope there's something in here for you to find, to put on your wish list as well, to put on your personal TBR pile. And I would be really interested if some of you would pick up some of the books. Maybe we can do buddy reads for some of them next year, and talk and discuss these exciting titles. So that's it from me today. I hope you enjoyed this little glimpse into my possible reading future, and join me again next week when we are talking about 15 SF titles I might going to read in 2015. If you like this video, please hit the like button. If you want to see more of me, subscribe to my channel. If you want to know what's coming up on my channel, please look inside the description box. There's a little segment there called On the Horizon. I wish you a good day and hope you get bitten by a really good book too. Bye.